You gotta do what?
I gotta believe.
PaRappa the Rapper is a groundbreaking game that I think most people didn't know. For those who click on the video about the game they aren't familiar with, PaRappa the Rapper is a music rhythm game released in 1996 for the Sony PlayStation. The game is focused on rapping, which is represented by the player timing each button on the screen to the beat of the song to make the character PaRappa rap. Now I know that today in 2019, music-centric games that demand players to press the right button on the right time is nothing new. Games like Guitar Hero, Guitar Freak, Dance Dance Revolution, and Space Channel 5 has taken the genre to mainstream, so it's not impressive. So why care about this outdated game? Simple. If it wasn't for PaRappa, then some of these games wouldn't exist or must be heavily changed since there is no game to compare it to. No, I'm not saying that PaRappa is the first ever rhythm game on console. That honor goes to Human Entertainment's Dance Aerobics for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Yes, the studio that will eventually release Clock Tower, the Fire Pro Wrestling games, and known as the stepping stone for a well-known auteur, Suda51, would have likely by accident create a whole new genre. Dance Aerobics was an early form of fitness game which requires the NES Power Pad, which is an accessory as an alternative to play games instead of using your thumb to use a D-pad. You rather use your legs to press each selected pressure pad to simulate using a D-pad. The whole point of this is to get people more active and exercise, and that's what Dance Aerobics exists for. I wouldn't be surprised that Dance Aerobics was an influence for the creation of the Wii Fit games, especially using a Wii balance board like the Power Pad used by Dance Aerobics. There wouldn't be any sort of evolution to the genre until the arrival of PaRappa, which I'm sure people were wondering how something unique like PaRappa is even created in the first place. I'm glad you asked. Our story takes place in Japan in the 1980s, where we see then the future creator of PaRappa, Masaya Matsuura, who is the first half of the duo of the Japanese progressive rock band Psy-S. His role is for producing, arrangement, and responsible for the instruments that appear on the group's music. The other half, known as Chaka, also known as Mami Yasuni, who is responsible for the vocals and songwriting of the group. Psy-S is pretty popular around the 1980s to the mid-90s, hitting their peak popularity by providing soundtrack to the cult 1980s anime like City Hunter and Toy Y, which is their most well-known music internationally. Unfortunately, the band split up by 1996. Before that, Matsuura was already doing solo projects of his own, which is all started by Matsuura going to Sony Music, which he was a part of the label, to see what's all the new type of technology being used. Why? Because Matsuura, while creating music as Psy-S, did use traditional instruments such as guitar, keyboard, and because it's the 80s, synthesizers. But he does use computers to enhance his music as well. So it makes sense why Matsuura would care about it, but with the rise of popularity of video games and how it quickly evolves thanks to the increasing power of computers, it makes Matsuura wonder if there's a possibility to get music to appear in multiple formats. In 1993, Matsuura completed and released his first game called The Seven Colors Legend of Psy-S for the Macintosh in 1993, exclusively in Japan. It's a bizarre game, which set in the city of Psy-S where all people of all ages can enjoy, and for what I found off of the footage, it looks great with all of the colors looking bright and wonderful, and it gives off similar vibes that PaRappa has as well. It's even one of the first ever first-person adventure games before Myst by mere months and 7 Guests by mere days. Sadly, the game is completely rare today, and even if you find the CD-ROM, the game is entirely in Japanese and it's only released there. But luckily, there is a dedicated group of Mac fans that are translating the game into English, so if you're interested, it's only a Google search away. After that, Matsuura created a new company with the aim to mix music and games together known as Nana-Oh-Sha, based in Tokyo in 1984. The first project started immediately as Sony needs to sign on many gaming companies to create games for the just recently announced Sony PlayStation. which wasn't even out yet. And let's remember guys that the whole PlayStation brand we are familiar with today didn't even come to fruition yet. To many analysts and insiders in the industry at the time, they thought Sony couldn't be able to break into the market that was dominated at the time with Nintendo and Sega, and they are doomed to repeat with the same mistakes with the Atari Jaguar and the Panasonic 3DO. But Sony knows that to get people's attention of their console, their game library should matter most, and the games itself needs to be high quality as possible to make. And Sony needs these said games to distinguish themselves for gamers to see the PlayStation as a completely different beast compared to the Super Nintendo and Sega Mega Drive. For Sony, Matsuura and his company has the power to make unique and fun games to help promote the PlayStation. So the deal was struck. Nana-Oh-Sha, with the leadership of Matsuura, will develop a game exclusively for the PlayStation. Now it's easy to see in hindsight to see how the finished project worked out in the end, either for the worse or the better. So it's easy to assume that if a game becomes critically acclaimed, we think that the developers that worked on it are geniuses and that they knew what they're doing. But that's far from the truth. Obviously, creating a game requires vast amount of skills in multiple areas. Ideas that were first planned almost all the time in game development changes, whether it be new ideas, technology and influence that can steer the concept of one game to become something else. But with Nana-Oh-Sha, they don't know what to do besides working on their goal to involve music in games. So it's been decided earlier on to make a game be focused on rhythm, and is the vital part for musicians to create any sort of musical work. After working likely weeks or months on the prototype, which was according to Matsuura being worked in Scratch to study the power of the PS1. After completing it, the team decided that they need to have a specific art design to carry the task of presenting a unique rhythmic game mechanics for the player to understand. Since Matsuura has already released a game that was filled with bright colors and high contrast that expressed the game's positivity, they definitely do not want to follow the trend of polygonal 3D craze that is sweeping up the industry at the time, which, yes, is a technological leap in the industry, but at the time, polygonal games were limited to color and detail, which make these games look more grimy and ugly, especially today with these technological limitations. While most games use lots of bright colors while keeping the polygonals such as Jumping Flash, but those types of games were limited compared to games that were aiming to mirror realism instead. Nana-Oh-Sha does not want to follow the trend and wanted to keep the game's uniqueness that expressed through the 7 colors, and they have found their perfect art director to meet the standard, Rodney Allen Greenblatt. He is an American graphics artist who has created multiple works throughout the 1980s, and he's still making art to this day, whether it's illusions on paper, animations, and sculptures. To Matsuura, he's the perfect artist to express the ideas of the game without fault. Greenblatt's art style is inspired for what he told from the New York Times in 1998, "My hamburger culture vision, which all of these high school kids in cars and bright colors, and my typical kind of geometry, my bumper buildings and squat little TP looking things." The game looks amazing and can easily stick out to be recognizable to anyone, whether they're young, old, or into games. But since the PlayStation is heavily advertising their games as being cutting edge 3D, being a 2D flat game wouldn't have cut it. So the team wisely came up with a technique that gave the characters the look of being made out with paper with the movements of a 3D space to qualify as a 3D game to fit with the advertisements alongside other polygonal games. The look was flawless and would help the game age far better compared to other PS1 games released around the same time. Fun fact, the name of the main character, PaRappa, is a play on Japanese word for paper thin, which was the look of the characters and environment. After that, Matsuura decided that the rhythm game should be focused on rapping. Why? Firstly, due to Matsuura's experience with working on computers in Sci-S, he's interested at the time with sampling, which is a type of technology used from the 80s to this day for artists to take specific tracks of a song, such as a beat, certain instruments, and the song to be manipulated enough for it to be used to create new music for the artist. One genre that benefited sampling the most was hip-hop. The genre that provided some of the best rap songs were beats created from other different songs. For examples, one of the first ever popular hip-hop songs was created by using 2 records together with precision timing to create one of the most recognizable tracks ever. Secondly, the art of rapping is the MC spitting out lyrics that are meant to be on the beat of the track, which is far easier for the player to understand, to play, rather than an instrument from another genre, and fits well within the gameplay. After all that, the game still hasn't had a main character yet, which, believe it or not, Matsura's first suggestion for the animal of the character to be a rapping shrimp. Fun fact, the friend of PaRappa such as Sunny, Katie, and PJ were originally designed from Greenbolt that were bought out from him. After all that, was possibly the most vital part of a rhythm game is the soundtrack itself. Matsura, with his connections as a musician, as well as having connections to Sony Music, gathered many DJs and songwriters to create some of the most recognizable hip-hop beats and lyrics that existed in gaming. Apparently, this was vital in the creation of the game's most iconic lines, Matsura stated in the 20th anniversary interview. There was a member in the development team that came up with the rap lyrics. His go-to phrase was, "I gotta believe." In one of our discussions, he suggested we should use that phrase, as we felt it was a good fit. Even after the game came out, he was boasting in the Punchlaw's interview about how he's the one who actually gave the line to PaRappa. After 2.5 years, Nana-Oh-Sha released PaRappa the Rapper on the Sony PlayStation in 1996. Finally, it's time to talk about the actual game itself. PaRappa is an iconic game that lasted throughout over 20 years. The music, presentation, gameplay and story. The music on PaRappa, which is the most vital part of the game, is great in multiple ways. The lyrics of the rap, while obviously written to be family friendly as possible, did have a great sense of humor, delivery and flow to keep the songs enjoyable for all ages. Who could not, years later, be able to remember the Master Onion's Chop lyrics?
Punch your soul in the mind. If you wanna test me, I'm sure you'll find the things I'll teach ya. Sure to beat ya. Nevertheless, you'll get a lesson from teacher now.
The funny bit of dialogue in the driving test stage.
Whoa, ho, ho, ho! Stop the car! We got an emergency, can't you see? Do you know why we stopped the car?
Do I know why we stopped the car?
Yes!
Yes.
What?
What?
Do you know why we stopped the car?
Do I know why we stopped the car?
Yes!
Yes.
What?
What?
I forgot to close the door.
You forgot to close the door.
The amazing flow in the flea market stage.
I'm working in the flea market so early. I've been working here since my mama was a baby. Just because the rhythm is slow, that don't mean that you can't flow. In the rain or in the snow,
In the rain or in the snow.
got the funky flow.
Got the.
I guarantee you, everyone who has played this game at least knows some lines in one stage. That's how memorable PaRappa is to gamers who played on the PS1. It will be known as a cultural icon on the system, and Nana-Oh-Sha nailed it on the head with this. The production of each song is great, with the beat giving the authentic hip-hop influence, with record scratches, drum machines, and the beatwork that gives off the nostalgic look of hip-hop's golden age of the 1980s, where rap is simple but more comedic and focused on partying, which seems more fun than it does with today with trap music, at least in my opinion. PaRappa as a story is simple. Our protagonist, Rapper, wanted to impress his secret crush, Sunny, who, yes, is a flower, and I know it's weird, forget about that. PaRappa would have multiple misadventures trying to impress Sunny. For example, at the first stage, PaRappa would want to learn how to fight to stop bullies from harassing Sunny. So he signed up for a karate dojo whose master is an onion. I know, let's stick with it. Just like that, each stage is focused on teachers trying to teach PaRappa on what he needs to do while being competitive in a rap battle. Whether it's PaRappa learning how to drive, bake a cake, or selling at the flea market. One thing I noticed in the story is how much PaRappa is constantly having obstacles stopping him. He always seems to say to get his mojo back by saying his most famous catchphrase, "I gotta believe." And he always ends up succeeding in his goal, which I like because you don't often see a video game character being optimistic and never giving up. Nothing will ruin this guy's day. Accused of murder?
I gotta believe.
Being robbed for all you had?
I gotta believe.
Owed $1,000 in debt?
I gotta believe.
See, nothing can stop this guy. While the story is simple, it's enjoyable for what it has in store for all ages. While I enjoyed many aspects of PaRappa, that doesn't mean it's perfect. The biggest problem of the game is the main gameplay, which is the rhythmic system. Sure, it's easy to understand what to do, just press the right button on the controller at the right time, but the problem isn't the system itself, but the timing of the buttons. It can be brutal at times, and at worst inconsistent. The window of opportunity is very small for the player to accomplish, and can be the reason why they often fail at the game. How? The game on the lower right hand corner is a level system to show how much the player has pressed the buttons correctly in each screen. The more you correctly press the button, the more the meter fills up. Simple, right? But if you miss or press the button the wrong time, the meter goes down, and if you reach the bottom, the game automatically ends, and you have to start the song all over again. It doesn't sound bad, right? But there's another problem that helps make the flaws of the gameplay even stronger: the icons on the controller. When the song plays, the icons on the PlayStation controller lines up for the player to press at the right time. Simple, right? But the problem is that in all versions of the game, the button icons are too big. Even in the PS4 version, which carries the same icons from the PSP version. It can be hard to tell where you're supposed to press it at the right time. Is it at the center? The side of the buttons? But even at the tiny window opportunity to press the buttons at the right time of the beat, it can make the game even harder. The fourth stage, with the chicken, is known for being the most difficult part of the game. Not the song itself or the placement of the buttons, but it has all the flaws of the system that create a brutal experience that makes it seem so unfair to many, because they believe they press it at the right time according to the screen. Even I barely got through the stage with a good rating, which for most of the song was metered at a bad rating. Here's a piece of advice: do not follow the beat that is displayed on screen. Follow the beat on the music. There's a mode in the PS4 version that allows you to use the vibration of the controller to feel the beat, so you know when to press it. It makes the game far less taxing and stressful. So PaRappa the Rapper is a classic on the PS1 that is now enhanced for current generations of consoles on the PS4 in full HD, and for pro users you can crank it up to native 4K display, which makes it look beautiful. The only drawback from this is that the CG cutscenes were not remastered at all, which likely due to the original assets missing, so the development team responsible for the port, Epix and Studio Japan, couldn't do anything about it. Fun fact, by the way, about the 20th anniversary port is that it's literally just the same exact PSP port content wise, except for the multiplayer. The PS4 port was literally a PSP emulator being run, but with high quality textures replacing the low quality PSPs. PaRappa the Rapper is a smash hit once it's released first in Japan, selling hundreds of thousands of copies in the first few weeks of its release. It would later be released in the Americas and Europe a year later and become a phenomenon as well, but it became just as much of an icon. The series will inevitably get a sequel released on the PS2 in 2001 in Japan and 2002 everywhere else. The next game, released by the same team of PaRappa, would release in 1999 called Jamalami, another rhythm game that focused not on rapping but playing as a lamb with a guitar. It's even got an arcade port by Namco only in Japan, which you play the same game but the controller is replaced with a guitar, which is like Guitar Hero, and the game came out only 6 years before. Sadly, the spin-off and sequel never really were as popular as the original and tend to fall into obscurity, especially with Lammy. Why? Who knows, but if you ask me, I would say it's because since the first PaRappa, so many games were inspired by it as it nailed the concept of a rhythm game, and many took the spot for the music genre, such as Konami's Beatmania in 1998, Dance Dance Revolution the next year took the rhythm genre mainstream, and everyone wanted to copy it. Then Konami would release Guitar Freaks in 1999, and then Guitar Hero would take the concept and put it on consoles, would be massively successful, and it would lead to Rock Band and Guitarsmith and etc. By the time Lammy and PaRappa 2 came out, they're not innovative anymore and are seen as outdated to some, as everyone is spending their time on the dance mat than pressing buttons to see a dog with a hat rap. It's a shame, especially since Lammy and PaRappa 2 are good games that deserve to be mentioned more. But what happened to Nana-Oh-Sha? They ended up stopping the series and only came back to supervise the 10th anniversary port of PaRappa on the PSP, and the same with the 20th anniversary for the PS4 in 2017. Throughout the years, they spent time making games on other platforms such as the PS1 classic, Vib-Ribbon and its obscure sequels on the PS2, Tamagotchi games on the DS, an obscure Wii game called Major Minor's Majestic March, which reunited Matsura with Greenbolt for this project. But it sold poorly, and it gave terrible reviews with low scores. Even Greenbolt agreed, saying, "No, I was not happy about Major Minor's majestic march. Pretty much everything went wrong. I could write a book about compounded mistakes made by hardworking and talented people." But even with hits, the company stayed strong. As of 2017, a Kickstarter website has been launched for a game made by Nana-Oh-Sha called Project Rap Battle, a game based in 16th century Japan with anthropomorphic animals rap battling similar to PaRappa and Gitro Man, but claims to be deeper than ever. The gameplay is centered around 3 phases of a rap battle: listen, respond, and rap, which the player in the first phase listen to the competition and pick out words from their rap. The second phase is the player using a dialogue wheel, like Mass Effect, on how to respond to their opponents. You rap, similar to PaRappa, by simply pressing the buttons in time to the music while rapping lyrics. The game had lots of potential, but sadly the game didn't reach funding and the game was cancelled. While it's unlikely to see PaRappa to have his 3rd entry now, since Nana-Oh-Sha has left their partnership with Sony long ago to seek other ideas, what I at least ask all of you who have sticked around the whole video is to give PaRappa the Rapper to give far more love and respect the game deserves. For those who haven't played the game before, it's available on the PSN store, but I recommend waiting for a sale because the game is very short, but still very fun. For those who did try long ago, at least try the game out again and see what you think. This is Kem the Chameleon here, signing out.
Somebody say ho! Say ho, ho! Say ho, ho, ho! Now scream! Say ho! Say ho, ho! Say ho, ho, ho! Now scream! What you gonna do when they come?
I got it redeemed.
What you gonna do when they come?
I got it believed.
What you gonna do when they come?
I got it received.